Didn't he make the last one?
Last one we got was in June,
Okay.
which was my first one.
No,
He made one that was his last one, I can't remember.
but it still should be listed here as a committee member.
Well, that, yeah,
That should.
that's right. I was thinking about, y'all were talking about the minutes.
There is a problem with the minutes,
Which one?
verbiage.
Where at?
I'll point it out. I'm sorry. Really don't have much time. It's- I guess we'll call this meeting to order. Guess we'll do roll call
Chris Matthew,
here.
Troy Shropshire,
Here.
Tyler Brown.
Here.
Okay. Want to point something out on the listing where it says committee members. Chris Gantier, Troy Shropshire, Randy Chitwood, Charles Tremble, alternate.
Yeah, we'll get our template fixed for the agenda.
Not a biggie, just oversight. Call the meeting to order. Petitions from the audience. I don't know of any. No? Okay. Okay. Number 3, discuss possibly approve minutes of the June 27th, 2024 special meeting.
Motion?
Second.
A motion and a second. I did want to point out one thing. On the number 4, the way it's worded is the same as it was worded for the fireworks. We actually made the motion and second to send it to the council for consideration. We didn't recommend action. We just sent it to council for consideration. If you remember. Because we didn't approve, or we didn't recommend, we did not recommend, we just wanted the full council to look at it. So we didn't actually say we wanted action, we just sent it to them for consideration.
Okay, so it needs to
What?
be,
Change action to consideration?
What do you want changed? So
Well, we didn't recommend an action, we just sent it to the council to be considered.
right, so you're recommending that council
Consider.
take action to consider whether they want to have that.
Yeah. Yeah. Because we didn't actually recommend an action, we just sent it for their consideration. We didn't want to make that recommendation or decision, just the 3 of us. We wanted the full council to do it. If I remember correctly.
yes, I'm just trying to figure out which one changed. The first
I
line.
haven't changed.
Well, we didn't recommend an action, we just, to recommend council consider.
Yeah, you could probably change it to that.
Or, you know, 'cause we didn't, like I said, we didn't recommend for or against, we just sent it to council to consider.
Well, I'd have to go back and watch the video, but unless you guys, because I wasn't here for that exact meeting, but unless you guys specifically state what your motion is, then it's as stated on the agenda. So unless you specifically said in that meeting that we are recommending this to council for their consideration, then it would have been printed in
I
our
thought we
minutes
did.
as stated in the agenda.
Can we check into that? We can approve it.
I-
We can't, we should table it probably.
Yeah.
rather than approve it.
Yes, or say I can't, if you approve it, I can't make any modifications, but I
Okay.
can back to you, so.
Do we have a
I'll make a motion to table.
Second.
motion, a second, any further discussion? Call for vote,
Gumby,
yes.
Shropshire,
Yes.
Brown,
Yes.
Number 4, discuss possibly recommend council action regarding an ordinance amending ordinance 7-4-4 camping to 1, prohibit overnight camping within the city limits of Pryor Creek, And two, allow for the use of a tent in the backyard of a private residential property owned directly by the camper for the purposes of family activities for up to 3 overnight periods. The purpose of the modification is to better ensure the safety and health of the city's general public, while simultaneously recognizing the need to accommodate limited family activities.
I'll make a motion.
Second.
Motion and a second. Discussion.
So something that's really kind of confusing to me under the B part, that's presumptive evidence of camping. The part that's kind of weird for me is the installation or stopping of any trailer or the erection of any tent or shelter after 1 hour before sundown shall constitute presumptive evidence of the breach of this section. Why do we have an hour before sundown in there when we're knocking it out throughout?
I guess if people, I'm assuming if people were gonna do some maintenance or look into it or air it out or whatever.
I think,
Technically, that part's already in our code.
no,
That was
I
a
think,
copy paste, I know it's already in the.
I think what Troy is asking is, why should we should probably just strike that
Okay.
after
I see.
1 hour before sundown. Because technically they can have it for 3 days. And this old code was for people sleeping in the parks, right? So,
Technically, that is irrelevant. I mean, for the purpose of the ordinance, it would be irrelevant. So yeah, you can strike it.
Yeah, we probably should talk about doing that, striking it.
So,
The thing that you probably need to keep in there is the erection of a tent in the backyard of private residence or residential property for the purpose of family activities for up to 3 overnights is not considered a breach of this section. That should be left in there for sure.
Right, that's what they're proposing, the
Mhm.
new parking.
But the other part, this doesn't make sense if you're gonna outlaw it altogether and then say you have to do it an hour before sundown.
so is,
my only other question on it was,
well, let's take care of this one. Do we want to strike this?
Does it make sense to leave it in?
I
there?
understand what you're saying. We just have to make the decision to take care of that, then move on to what your concern is.
I think it should be take out after 1 hour before sundown.
Is that what you were thinking, Troy?
The 1 hour before sundown just didn't make a lot of sense.
And so there's
Start with after and go to sundown.
so I guess you'd make a sub-motion to remove that? Or do we
I think
consensus on that?
I would think that we just make a motion with our approved changes when we're done.
Okay, yeah, we'll do that. All right, unless there's one or the other. All right, what was your concern?
I'm curious where we came up with 3 overnights and 5. Or if those were just numbers we used. Do you have any insight on that, Mayor?
The 5 was just to put a limit on it to give it a number,
Okay.
so that it wouldn't end up being an indefinite. The council member that came up with that was the suggestion from there, so. It could be 6 nights, it could be 2 nights, it could be 1 night. It was just so that it wasn't an indefinite amount of, put it up and leave it forever. I would also probably suggest that we add in there the words residentially zoned, possibly. Just be, as I'm sitting here thinking about, when we talk about residential, but also residential zoning, which would encompass like.
Where are you
different types of
suggesting that
residential.
goes?
Do what?
Where is your suggestion that that goes?
Probably somewhere in that sentence that talks about the,
It would have to go in the part of B.
backyard of a private residential or residentially owned property.
It says right there, the erection of a tent in the backyard of a private residential property, so it's already there.
I'm just saying, maybe throw in there, even in parentheses, zoned, so that that's included in the verbiage.
A private residentially zoned property.
Yeah. it's easy to find out. I don't expect them to know everything.
Is it easy to find out if you're on night shift? I'm,
Would you like me to help, Zach?
Do what?
So would you like me to help?
Yeah, you can jump in there if you want to answer that one.
It's on our city website, so that if the officers would have
Okay.
a question, they could go online and look, and
Okay.
as well as the dispatchers.
Like I said, that's a suggestion. You guys don't like it, I'm okay with it, I'm just suggesting.
I don't see any point in changing it because it says residential. Residential is residential. Personally.
So basically what you're saying is there's a piece of property that somebody owns, but there's not a house on it, but it's residentially zoned. That's the property you're talking about. Doesn't necessarily have to have a house on it, but it could be in a block somewhere between two houses that's zoned residential, but they put a tenant.
The idea is, I think really more the idea is, and I'll retract what I said there with the zoning, but is that the point about the use of intent in the backyard of a private residential.
I just wanted to tell you.
It's all right. Property owned directly by the camper for the purpose of family activities. So we want to make sure that, I think like I said before, if Browns are camping on the Browns' backyard, then the Browns are okay in the Browns' backyard.
What about people that rent properties that?
Well, that's kind of why I was thinking the residentially zone, that would be residential multifamily as well, which would cover apartments, things like that.
I'm curious about commercial or other properties. So there's an exception for private residential property as it reads, for up to 3 nights. But there is no exception if you are on commercial property or any other type of zone or
There is
other
no
type of
ex-
property. So essentially, 1 night would be in violation of it?
There is on the next C, there's a waiver.
That's a waiver for up to 5 days if they have our approval, but if they don't have our approval, 1 night, they would be in violation if they're not on a residential property.
Mhm.
So what if you live in a church?
Churches are commercial properties.
But I,
Churches are commercial.
but I live there.
It's still, churches by ordinance is a commercial property. It's supposed to be
Yes,
commercially
but
zoned.
Chris, in your specific situation, a portion of your church property is your residence that you live in. So, that's why I say that's what this discussion is for.
I mean, I don't know that they would give a problem, which, I don't know. I want to make a couple of comments, and I know this was addressed in the city council meeting. The concern about telling people what they can and can't do on their own property. And I know it was mentioned, the citizens might want to vote. I would be in favor of just sending this out for a vote of the people, because there's a lot of people on both sides of this issue. It's a lot closer than what people think. I personally have some issues with it. Property owners telling what they can and can't do. Limiting it to 3 days if a church wanted to have an activity, stuff like that.
If the church wanted to have an activity, they would have to come to council for approval.
Get a waiver.
But why would a church have to get permission from the government to do what the church would do if it's a youth activity?
I understand, I'm just saying churches are commercial property, so per this proposal, it would have to require permission from the city council before they could do that.
If I may, just real quick. I just want to remind, I understand your comment and I understand your concern, but I also can't go and erect a 5-story building in my backyard without city's permission. There are things that within the bounds of the city limits that the city has ordinances and laws for. It's not, we can say taking away the rights and privileges and constitutional rights of the people. That's not at all the case. Otherwise, we wouldn't be able to tell you that when your grass gets to be 3 feet tall, go mow it. We would also have to say dogs have to be kept contained. You're not allowed to have dogs at large. Those laws and ordinances are there to keep order in the city and throughout the city. And the city does have, within the bounds of the city limits, the right to put ordinances and laws in place. Otherwise, we would have no need for law enforcement. We would have no need for an ordinance committee. So it's not about taking away people's rights and privileges. It's about protecting the interest of the city. It's about protecting the safety, the welfare of those around. There's a lot of other factors. So, you know, the argument of you're taking away people's rights and people don't have a choice. No, you have a right, you have a choice. And the reality is, Councilman Brown and I were talking about this when this first came up. If the Doyles were having a camp out in their backyard and neighbors called and said, hey, this tent's up in this backyard, I would fully expect law enforcement to come and check on it. Make sure that we're doing what's right. Just like if I had something else, a 12-story building in my backyard. He's building this tower back there, what's going on? I would expect somebody to come check on it. If I'm not in any violation and I'm following things, I have nothing to worry about. And that's what that's all about. It's about just keeping ordinance and order in the city. And so, you know, there was plenty of concern from other council members and from individuals throughout the city that we needed to address our camping ordinance. That's what this is. And so, that's all I'm gonna say on that.
So are we going with zoning, or are we gonna forget that part?
I don't know that it's necessary because it says residential. I think it would be redundant. I do want to mention, I have heard, though I have not verified this, and Mr. Mayor, I want you to hear this because like I said, I have not verified this, but I know Shoto has passed something similar, and there's already a lawsuit, from what I've heard. And so I don't know the details. I just recently heard about this. I haven't had a chance to look
Well,
into
it
it.
seemed the Supreme Court passed a ruling that a city
In
can
public
have
places.
to do that.
Yeah, in public places. I think it might be on the private property. But I'm just gonna go on the record saying that I am not in favor of council making this decision. I think it should go, if we're gonna consider this, I think it should go to a vote of the people.
This committee doesn't have the right to send something to a vote of people, though, right?
No,
It would have to go
we
up to
could
council.
recommend to the council that the council take action. We could recommend to the council that we send it to, or we can just say, hey, like we did last time, you know, these are some options, what do you want to do? We can't make a binding anything, we can only recommend.
I think it was sent back down for us to finalize the wording and send it back up, was what I understood at the council meeting. Is
Correct.
that, okay.
Mayor, if you have a clue, I don't know, what would an election possibly cost to basically put this on
According
the
to
ballot?
what the new rates are for that, there's new pricing on that.
Very expensive depending on the time of the year you want to do it. If we do it when, like in November, when we vote or whenever we have to vote for presidential stuff, it's gonna be much cheaper. If we do it in February when we do our normal elections, we're the only ones paying for that, so we have to fit the whole bill. Last year, let me see exactly what we spent last year.
While you're looking that up, we can recommend the council to pass this, not pass it, or we can recommend that we put it to the vote of the people, but the council can either accept what we're recommending or decide what they want to do as a council on their own.
Well,
So
I think what we would recommend is that they look at the changes we made and make their decision for
wording,
the
yeah.
changes. Yeah.
For the February election alone, it was almost $5,000.
So if you had it during your February, it would probably be a lot more expensive than that.
no, that was,
No, that's-
Oh, February, okay, I thought you were talking.
No,
so
November
it should be
Yeah.
less.
If we tried to put it out there at any time when we didn't have an election is when it would be the most expensive.
Right, because we have to split the bill that they pay to all of their volunteers that, well, they're not volunteers because we pay for it, but for all that, we have to, if we do it in November or something, we're sharing that with everybody else, not paying for all of it ourselves.
So it would be substantially cheaper, I'm sure.
Are we going to address commercial properties or not address commercial properties? Because as it reads, in my opinion, if you camp one night on commercial property, you're in violation. And if that's the intent, then I guess, okay, but it's not really clear.
So, right now, we're talking about removing the after 1 hour before sundown. We decided not to do the zone, but this would be tying in with what you're saying. If somebody owned a commercial property and they wanted to do it,
Without council approval for up to 5 days and nights, they're in violation after night 1.
or what about agricultural? I mean, some people might have a little agricultural piece in and go camp by the creek. I mean, what?
Residential properties are the only ones covered with a,
Yeah, I agree with what you're saying. I mean, is that something we want to look into?
Where would you have, I'm trying to think of Pryor, where you would have a agricultural
do we have anything
in
besides probably?
inside the city limits that has a creek?
Not with the city.
We do on the Giles property, we have that scenario, but that's city property.
That's city property.
Yes, or say
yeah.
not with, it's not city property.
We don't have anything industrial, that would probably be the only other zones that we would have, right? Besides commercial and residential.
I can't think of any industrial, let me pull the zoning map, but,
Or do you have input on the commercial property issue?
Do what, I'm
Do you
sorry.
have any input on the commercial property discussion?
I think it would, my opinion on that, not conversing with the council members that created this, or that suggested the changes, I think if they were to come and get, so I would think if they were to come and get a permit from the city for X amount of nights, like if a church wanted to have a camp out, or, you know.
But what if, I'm talking about in an instance of night 1, if there's an issue, rather than 3 nights on commercial property. Because as it reads, I don't think that the commercial property has any exemptions here for up to 3 nights. They're in violation on the first night. And I guess my question is, do you think that we should have an exemption for them, or should we leave it as it stands?
I can't think of any reason why unpermitted or unpermissed there would need to be camping on a commercial property.
Trying to eliminate this thing going back up and back down 100 times, so.
Notice I said though, permissed or permitted, so that's key.
Back to B, is there any reason to have that blue section in
Mine's all
there
black and
again?
white, so.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. The top, if you look up here at top under A, and it starts with the erection of a tent, it's exactly the same thing in A as it is in B. So why are we saying it again?
I brought that up last time, just in that A is its own ordinance violation and B would be its own ordinance violation. So if an officer had to go write something or cite somebody for something, they would have to put it under the proper ordinance. And A is something different than B, and just something,
I just want to put in a point of reference real quick.
but that was why I was there.
Mayor of Shoto says that there is no lawsuits, which the second time today she's been asked about that.
So, it sounds like general consensus after 1 hour we want to remove, but we're still discussing the non-residential property possibilities. I mean, if you put it, the erection of a tent for the purposes of family activities for up to 3 overnights, if you did that and left that clause out, focusing on family activities could be a potential way maybe of addressing what you're looking at. I don't know.
I think you should all,
consider the erection of a tent, and then from there to the point, for the purposes of a family activity, that section in the middle could be removed and would allow the,
So you're saying the erection of a tent for the purposes of family activities for up to 3 overnights is not considered a breach of this section, basically?
I think that would alleviate your concern for
That would be a
other
suggestion.
properties.
Why not get rid of A in the sense of combining the two of them and having it, instead of consent required, just presumptive evidence of camping, and then list in there that they can get council permission in the same thing, and then the officers are able to still write the citation for setting up tents or a trailer or anything like that, and then the residential part is still in there, giving them permission to do that without council permission, and then the council permission is in there if they actually get that, and then it's one.
Well, for them to pull a tent up in their backyard for the kids to camp in, we don't need council permission for that.
No, but I'm saying combine A and B essentially, but instead of it
All right,
saying
let's-
consent required.
All right, give us a second to digest what you just said. We gotta look at A and B and see if they even can be combined. I don't know if you can. One's consent required and one's presumptive evidence.
What's the difference?
One is telling you what's allowed, and the other one is
Saying what's not.
clarifying how to tell whether you're in violation or not. Is that what you would get out of that, Tyler?
I'm just saying, when an officer goes and finds something like this, they're not gonna know which one to write it for, and I'm gonna get a phone call, and they're gonna ask me, and I'm gonna say, I don't know, because it
I-
says the same thing twice.
I think you could completely take that out, move this.
All right, you gotta tell us what you're saying, because that way people that are watching can,
I think you could make it read, consent required overnight camping within the limits of the city is prohibited without the consent of mayor and council, period. Then you could start in the installation or stopping of any trailer or the erection of any tent or shelter shall constitute presumptive evidence of the breach of this section. Then you can have your ending clause of the erection of a tent for the purpose of family activities for up to 3 overnights is not considered a breach of this section. I don't think that it should have it in the backyard. We can discuss, I guess, on a private residential property, but some people are not gonna camp in their backyard. I wouldn't want that. As a law enforcement officer, you can get creative with statutes if you just read the words. So,
and I am a
just
little,
seeing in the backyard could say, well, they're in violation because they're in the front yard, not in the back.
and the installation or stopping of any trailer or the erection of it, we are allowed to camp in a trailer for up to 7 days, if I'm not mistaken, in any 30-day period of time. Yeah, we allow that. We passed an ordinance to allow that. It was passed through council. So that would be like if you had a camper and you had family coming for the holidays and they wanted to sleep in that camper. That has passed.
Yeah, we passed
That passed full council. So that would be, that phrase here would be a conflict with the other one that does allow it for up to 7 days. Within a 30-day period of time, if I'm not mistaken.
But you have to get a permit to do it.
We do not have a permit for that.
It was part of, I believe it was part of the ordinance, we'll have to look it up. But the deal was, if you had people coming over for a holiday or something, and, or they were visiting or something, and there wasn't enough room in your house to, to house them, but you had a camping trailer or a RV or something, that you could actually let them use that for sleeping purposes or
And this
whatever.
was before, I think, the two of you.
Oh, yeah,
This
yeah.
was during Larry's
Mhm.
term. And it was also, if I'm not mistaken, we also included in there that like in an emergency, say like a tornado ripped half our town up, the mayor could waive it to where people could live in their camper or probably rebuild their homes. So that was all part of it, but like I said, that was done when y'all weren't here, so you wouldn't remember that. So, I don't want to have conflicting ordinances.
You could easily
You're
make
hopeful
that
that-
camping period match the RV period. That would be, if it does say that they could do the 7 days at RV on your property, if you have family on a residential, then you could easily make that 5-day to match that time period.
Well, the 5-day is an organized group. That, we would have to do that for up to 3 overnights. That would be, I think, where that change would make.
That's what I'm talking about. You could make that match that RV ordinance.
I would be in favor of that because right now it's contradictory. Because it was 7 days within a 30-day period of time. Is that how it was worded, I believe?
Something like that, God's been 3 or 4 years ago, we did it. They were.
Not that long ago. I was on council.
Well, it's been
We've slept
longer
since
than
then.
you think, because Larry Leeds was on.
Yeah.
Okay, and he had been on for a short period of time when all this came up. So if you think about it, what we were having trouble with, people parking RVs and everything outside in the front yard and in their driveways. So we came up with the ordinance that said that you couldn't have an RV parked toward the street further than the front of your house. That was how the ordinance started out. Then we were talking about people that were going to maybe be using them as overflow for a holiday or visitation or something like that. That's how it all started out. Another thing was the trailers that people were parking out in the street and leaving them in the street overnight or whatever.
It was passed February 21st, 2023. It is 7 days in a 30-day time.
Okay.
This would have to reflect. Would you say it was 7 days within a 30-day?
And it is specifically camping trailer, travel trailer, motorhome, or other recreational type vehicle or trailer.
Okay.
That works with the trailer discussion, it's just about intent.
Yeah, but like what the mayor was saying, what if somebody, they don't have the money to have it, you know, they have a small home, but their family comes in and so the kids camp in the backyard with their cousins for a week during Christmas. That's what he was saying. I mean, do we want to move it to 7 instead of 3?
I don't know that you have to have a set number of.
I just what I was showing Chris was I just marked out the whole portion about a trailer. Like, I don't know why that even has to be in there. We're talking about the erection of tents anyways.
Well, the thing is that has to stay there if this ordinance is gonna work, because it's not just private property, this is also talking about city. So we don't want somebody popping a camper up in a
What
park.
we had an incident of is out at the rec center at one time, there was a person that, they basically lived in the rec center parking lot, is what they did. And they were in a Class C or whatever. So we were wondering about trying to figure out how to cover something like that, because that was on city property. And they, instead of having a domicile, they just lived in their unit out there in the parking lot.
And I know we've discussed this loosely, and you know, when somebody has like these fireworks stands, and they have a camper trailer there, they need to watch it, to keep stuff from getting stolen.
Sure.
That verbiage, I know somewheres in there has to be there to allow that.
Has to be there to allow for restrooms on premises.
Do what?
We allow it to have restrooms on premises. That's the reason they can have campers there for fireworks games.
Yeah, but I just
Not
know
for sleeping quarters, just access
it's
to
related, even though it's not directly with this one. It's something though that we need to make sure it's in there so that, because we all would agree, I would assume that, you know, in a situation like that, you don't want to leave a tent and go home and free reign for kids or whoever to go tear up everything. So I don't know if it needs to be addressed in this section or not. That also would be typically on private property that would, on a commercial piece of ground. So I don't know if that's a section that would be included, even though it's not the same intent as this. It's, when we nail verbiage down to one spot, we gotta make sure that trickle down effect. Mr. Brown, what do you think? I know you're thinking,
I think I'm making a lot of changes that I'm not sure that we can make in one night, I guess, but in my thoughts, I guess, are if we need to have something that covers camping on city property or the installation of trailers, then maybe that needs to be its own section that deals with that, and then another section that deals with the private property issue.
Do you think we need to talk to Chase about this?
Probably.
So that we get this legal jargon down right.
Just for clarification, because you said the city, like city properties and stuff, and that actually wasn't there until it was
Right,
proposed here.
taken out.
Yeah, the use of parks and public areas was stricken.
And essentially what they did was made it a blanket for the entire city, whether it was city property or personal property, but keep cutting words out, and it's gonna get a little complicated.
I agree.
So what do you want to do with this?
I think that we do need to consider the idea of these trailers or motorhomes or whatever, when people have, like they come in and they have fireworks stand, or maybe they get a permit to have a food truck somewhere for 2 weeks, and they have a camper there that,
They have a permit for that though.
We do not have a permit
No.
for allowing a camper anywhere,
they do it, but
not by coming to the city and getting
Right.
permission first.
But I have seen it, and so it's something that,
The only thing that is allowed is that 7 days in a 30-day time period for families.
to my knowledge, that's the only thing I know that is actually in writing,
Correct.
that I know of.
In this zone, or in this ordinance, it says that that it applies to the areas in the city which is allowed by applicable zoning, and there's no zoning, there's no zones that allow it.
Yeah.
Because the only place that you can have a trailer of any sort is a mobile home park, and it has to be specifically zoned for that, and
And there's only 2 places.
there's only one mobile home park in the city.
I thought they had a little spot behind one of the motels where they could actually park campers.
There is a spot behind the motel that has campers parked there, yes, but that doesn't mean that it's in the ordinances allowing it.
I thought it was zoned for that, grandfathered in or something.
That was before my time here.
I think we don't take any action tonight, and let's try to figure out exactly what wording we want. It's gonna be hard to do that with quorum issues, but
Well, that may change when we, although we're not gonna have action items, but subsequent discussions on some things. So do we wanna have a motion for no action right now, or do we wanna table it, or?
We have some issues we're gonna have to bring up and figure out in accordance with the other ordinance, see what's,
And I do think Chase needs to be in the loop on this, because we've got several.
did he look at this?
Not a clue, I have nothing to do with this.
Okay.
I'm not sure either.
I'm not sure he did. Wasn't he supposed to? Did we say we needed to get him to talk, to look at it at least?
I don't know.
He's probably gonna look at our final draft. He doesn't
He
like.
should be the one drafting it for you guys to propose changes to.
So,
I'm gonna amend my motion to no action tonight.
I'll second.
All right, any further discussion? Let's call for vote for no action.
Shropshire,
Yes.
Brown,
Yes.
Gantier,
Yes. listen in on this part and see what we were talking about. That way we don't all go to him and find a forum. All right. Number 5, discussion regarding a review of city purchasing policies. Is there a motion to discussion?
Second.
Motion and second. Okay. Who wants to?
Chase has sent me a review of some of these that he's been working on, bidding procedures. I don't know, have you seen a copy of it?
Of what?
The bidding procedures and stuff for the city that he has been working on? Okay,
Sure have.
I'll get it to you so that you have it.
Did he give you an official opinion
On
on like his letterhead and stuff?
his bidding procedures? No, this is work that he had done on suggested changes to the language.
Okay.
And so I had asked to have this put on here so that we could start going through it, but I'll have to get somebody, Chase was supposed to forward it on, I don't know if he sent it to you guys or not, but this is coming on the heels of the last meeting when we were at, when we, Lamar and myself brought up that we need to make some changes in the way that all department heads are making purchases and bidding and everything like that is being done in a uniform manner. So it's 9 pages, so I'll try to see if he'll send that to you guys to look at. We can't take any action on it tonight, but I'll discuss at least what it's about. The only other discussion that I talked to him about there in it was yearly mandated training for the department heads to go back over it so that they are understanding what they can and can't do. I don't know, Courtney might know more than me, and I don't want to talk ill, but I think that we probably have some places we can improve on pretty easily on our purchasing policies and procedures.
I know they're not all handled the same in each department. There's some differences. And when you have differences, it can be confusing.
What do you mean by differences? Maybe I can.
And a lot of it's the personality of whoever's there. I'm not saying that they're trying to do anything shady or underhanded, but if it's not all done the same way across the board, you're not gonna catch things. It's just like, I caught something because we had asked you to attach, when we made the motion in a second and approved a purchase or something. It wasn't on something that I was supposed to sign, and I questioned it because we handled it all the same way. And that one didn't have it. I don't think you were here that day, but it wasn't there. And so it threw a flag and caused us to look, and then we had to have that special meeting to get it because it wasn't done.
Yeah.
Well, when we have everything done the same across the board for everybody, we know whether that procedure has been followed or not.
Right. That's more of a requirement for large purchases and with the department heads and my office and the way that we do our things alike. That's not something that was specifically that department head's fault.
No, I'm not saying that was the department head's fault. I'm just saying, I noticed that we didn't do something that we should have done
Right.
because we didn't have the attached papers like we normally do.
Right.
And then that's what, okay, did we? Wait a minute, it makes us look, and that's why I like uniformity and consistency so that we can track things better. And I think you are in agreement with that, and from what Terry Lamar was saying, and I'm pretty sure, without speaking for people, pretty much all the council love to have it pretty consistent where we could keep track of it easier. So.
The only other discussion was Chase said if there was anything else that we wanted to change, just needed to give it to him so that he could make the final edits. And I think at that point, after his review is done, it can come into us where we can change our purchasing ordinance, send it up and be done with it.
So we're looking at any purchase over $1,000 shall be approved by the mayor prior to making the purchase. Any department head or authorized purchasing agent is hereby authorized to make purchases on behalf of the city for a sum not to exceed $1,000, right?
That's already in.
Yeah,
That's
I mean,
already.
that's the only thing that I've
It's
got.
more of
It's the
how are we
bidding.
gonna handle our bidding rather than, it'll clearly define with dollar limits on how bidding will be done and how it will be published. And, my talks with Chase was, there's nothing wrong with publishing everything. It doesn't hurt us to publish anything. Right, but it also allows us to reach a wider audience and
Exactly,
get
that's
better.
the best part of it is,
And we may end up saving money in the long run,
Correct.
and if we
oh, I'm
do-
not complaining whatsoever, I just,
Yeah.
I think that's perfect because we need to make sure we're having everybody the opportunity.
Bid stays sealed until they get the meetings and everything.
We don't have a city manager.
Zach gets that hat.
Huh?
Zach gets that hat,
Yeah, that's under his department.
yeah.
Do we need to vote to get out of that? It's just discussion only?
Yeah, it's discussion only, so if you guys are done, you can move on to the next item.
Okay, is everybody satisfied then? Number 6, discussion regarding the addition of 1 seat for a total of 4 seats on each committee.
Make a motion.
Second.
I do like this idea because when there's 3, that means one of us has to take something and do it without communicating with the others on the committee. Whereas if there's 4 of us, 2 people can work together on a project and not be in violation of quorum. That's something that I like about this. Because I know that he's working on it, I want to work on it, but if I work on it, he works on it, and then, whereas if we're working together,
This ordinance that we just got through discussing, we can't discuss them with one another outside of this. So,
right,
another example is this is not what I turned into Zach to put on the agenda. This is what Zach proposed to put on the agenda. But I couldn't send it to the committee chair for you to put it on the agenda without sending it through Zach.
Just in general, you can send things to the agenda request email chain that goes to Jay and Zach and everyone alike, that way we can all see it at the same time.
Yeah, it wouldn't change the fact that Zach's going to put on the agenda what Zach wants on the agenda, but
Right, but.
I could send it
Jay
directly
would
to the
copy
committee
your
chair.
verbiage,
I
Yeah.
don't know that that would be a violation. If we were discussing it, it would. But if you were wanting something to be put on the agenda to be discussed open, I don't see how that's doing business. That would be a violation of the thing, just sending it, say, hey, I'd like this one, that's so we can discuss it.
Well, let's look at this 4-seat thing a little bit further. You have a committee of 8 or 4 people, and you have a vote, and it's 2 and 2. Who's the tiebreaker?
I can see that point.
So the next thing you have to do is put 5 people on committee.
I think you could.
I mean, you gotta have that
I have
balance.
asked Chase, but I think that you could set it to where if it's a tie, it automatically goes to the city council for review.
Well,
We would obviously have to amend some ordinances for that, but.
But that would be a.
But I think that's a way to issue to deal with the tiebreaker.
And I had thought about that as well.
so if you have 4 people on there, and we have 8 councilmen, that means that you're going to have several people that are going to be on 2 councils,
Committees.
committees, two committees. Several councilmen will be on 2 committees at the same time, so you're not going to be able to talk about hardly anything.
We can only talk about what's on the agenda in a meeting anyway. And if it's given
Right.
notice,
But
It
we
doesn't
were
matter
talking
who's
about
here.
2 of you could talk together because you hadn't made a quorum with 2 people, or if you had 4 people on the committee. So you're actually talking about talking together on something before it comes to council or before it comes to another committee. So that is you're not breaking the quorum rules if you have 4. So that's kind of what the whole thing is to try to get it where more than one person can work on something without it going to full
violate
committee,
quorum.
right? And
Yeah.
violate quorum.
So like if this committee decides, okay, hey, we need to work on this camping ordinance.
Mhm.
And then we have something else.
Mhm.
That means these 2 could go work on it, these 2 can go work on the other thing, and then bring it back without being in violation.
Which violates the Open Meeting Act. Why not?
Because
The
we're
only
not
time
a
we're,
quorum.
now, I don't agree with the Open Meeting Act, I'll tell you straight up, do not agree with the Open Meeting Act, because we get hit with it right here, we're trying to figure out something the night that we get it, right? We get the agenda the night or so before in the packet, but according to the rules and regulations, I'm really concerned that if you work on something prior to, doing it in the Open Meeting Act, then we're in violation.
I mean, I think we can have discussion, like, city council business next week. If I had something that was in a packet, I think that I can have a discussion with you about
If
it.
you got something that's in a packet, yeah, because it's already out in the public. But if you have something that you want to work on prior to it being in the packet,
But we're not
supposed to
making any
do that.
decisions. We're trying to, like right now, we want to work on these changes.
Mhm.
Well, how are we gonna do that?
Have another meeting.
Right.
That's the only way you can do it.
Which is, but also, we just spent north of 40 minutes discussing a camping ordinance that we don't
Already
action on
talked
because
about.
we can't talk about. I mean,
Mhm.
we got in here and we're like, okay, well, we still need to make lots of changes.
Now, if
It's not a
you,
very efficient process.
it's not, but if you, the Open Meeting Act is not very efficient at all. And we'll all have to agree on that. But that's the whole thing, is they decided that you're supposed to talk about all this stuff and make our decisions
Make our decisions, do the
out
business.
out in front of the public while we're thinking all this stuff up. That's the whole purpose of the Open
Well,
Meeting Act.
But I think you can have discussions behind closed doors so that we're not sitting out here bickering and fighting during council meetings all the time too. You have to limit it. I don't think all three of us can get on a conference call at the same time and do that. But if there's four, two of us could at least discuss it.
But I think it goes down to doing business. We're not trying to say, this is what we need to do. We're trying to polish it up to present it to the committee. Is this what you want, yes or no? You want this change? We're not trying to bind anybody under anything. We're trying to efficiently do the will of the committee.
Right.
I think a request was sent to Chase for some clarification on all of that too.
Well, that's what we need. We need to know from Chase if that's in violation of the Open Meeting Act. Does it make sense? It's always made sense, but the Open Meeting Act, in my opinion, doesn't make sense because you're out in front of everybody trying to hash out stuff that you probably needed to hash out prior to that.
That's why we just did discussion on this tonight.
There's a few reasons that I want to bring up, one of which she's bringing up too, but if you're wanting it specifically to review the camping ordinance, that's what the ad hoc committees are for. You guys could have an ad hoc committee specifically for that purpose, and then once you're done with whatever you've assigned to that committee goes away. Also, the cost of that, if you guys have extra people on here committee-wise, that's more money that the city's gonna be spending per meeting for each person. You guys get, what, $50, I think, per committee meeting, and
I think
100
so.
for council?
And I think
And then specials
75
are-
for a special.
Yeah. And then if there's an additional committee created on top of any of that, then that's more money that is gonna be spent.
Yeah.
But also, if we don't have to have a meeting every month,
Correct.
but we're gonna have to have one next month to go over this camping ordinance, no matter
Well,
what.
there's some of them you have to have. You-
Yeah, your budget meeting, you guys are gonna
Budget
have,
meeting,
and I think
street
street you're gonna have, but we don't have to meet every month.
No, oh, and I didn't, but we're probably the only one that really don't.
Yeah. But we're gonna have to meet again next month because for nothing else to go over the camping ordinance. Had we had time to have some discussions, I mean, we could have probably eliminated a lot of the fluff in there tonight.
Yeah, and that's why the Open Meeting Act is
Yeah, I-
really not that good.
Maybe Chase will have some better answers in the next week or so.
All right. Any more discussion on item number 6? Okay. Number 7, and it says discussion regarding the creation of a fire and police oversight committee. Is there a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Is there a second?
I'll second if I can address the Scrivener's error on that.
Well, that's why we're discussing it.
Okay. It's not an oversight committee, and that was never sent to Zach. That is a Zach Doyle term.
Well, I know I sent it to them, that I did not use the word oversight
So
either.
what word did you use?
Well, I'll read to you what,
Fire and police committee.
and I'll read to you what I sent, because I'd had several people mention this to me from council, that they would like it discussed, because they don't want to discuss it and violate quorum, but they want it to be discussed. And so, I mean, I'll read exactly what I said. And I don't, like I said, I don't know if somebody else requested it this way, but it wasn't me. Let me get to it. I'm gonna put it.
I'll talk about my thoughts on where this came from, since we can't take any action anyway, but just, when we were in our municipal officers class last week, one of the things they talked about was, if you want to get something obtained, then you need to sit down and make some long-term goals, and you need to put things in place that if the people change, the goals stay the same. I've talked to Chief Young, I've talked to Chief Cantrell. I think they both had a different opinion about what the mechanism behind this was, but the thought behind it was, there are long-term goals that both the police and fire have. They are our biggest budgets in the city, and currently, whatever goals, hopes, or dreams they have go with the person, and there is nothing that stays with the department. Anything Chief Nichols had went away when Chief Cantrell came in. Anything that Chief Cantrell has goes away whenever he's gone. Same thing with Mayor Lees, Mayor Doyle, Mayor Trammell before that. Anything that they have goes away with that person. My thoughts on the committee was, sit down, make a list. The FOP hit us with lots of things that they want done this year. I don't know what the fire department's gonna want, if anything, but if they do, it may not be attainable to get all those things in 1 year, but if somebody puts something together and tried to keep everything on track, as far as making sure funding mechanisms are there, making sure if a project is, I don't want to micromanage them, and I don't want any part of running their departments. But if somebody is there to make sure that the spending that they're doing is in line with the long-term goals that they can create, I would think that it would be good to have their opinion on what they need to create and what the officers are gonna want long-term. In my mind, that's what it's gonna take, because I've talked to both of them and they both agree. The only time any actions ever actually happen for either one of them are negotiation time and budget time, and that's whenever they can make their big changes. And they both agreed that, hey, it would be nice to have a 3-year, 5-year, 10-year plans for what they wanted to do with their departments. That is where my thoughts of trying to get this going was coming from.
I think we would be, if this happens, if we have a committee formed for this, I think it would be a good idea that the council would not be a part of that. I think who needs to be a part of it, just like the rec center, you have it, parks, you have it. There's several committees that are just civilians, I'm gonna put it that way.
Those are all boards.
Boards, okay,
So
well, you
it'd be
can
police
call
and
it a
fire
board.
board,
You can call it a
or
board.
police board or fire board.
You
separate.
could have a board, and then it wouldn't be directly tied to the city council, it would be the citizens that were picked to be on such a board and take care of business that way. Y'all's thoughts?
Let me
All of the
read,
other
let me read what I
departments
sent.
All of the other departments do have, not all of the departments, but all of the other departments that have some sort of board or committee, those are all boards of the public. No other department has
Yeah.
council members over.
Set straight.
Hang on, let me read this. This is what I sent to Zach. I would like to have a discussion in O&I regarding foreign committee, as well as the police and fire committee. I have had several on council want it discussed. It doesn't necessarily need to be an action item at this point. And so that's what I was doing. Now, when it comes to what you're saying about having citizens, and I'm not opposed to citizens being involved. I'm very transparent in touch. But, and I agree, we don't want to micromanage. But we do want to have eyes on, because 46% of the general budget is police. I don't know what it is for fire. So, but it's definitely well over half of the money that's being spent. It would be good for council members to be able to keep an eye on what's going on, that can report back to the council, so that we can make sure we're staying on track. Because right now, we're trying to figure out where money's going.
The same thing happens with the rec. I know they're working on different tax dollars and stuff like that, but the board of the rec looks at what's going on there and keeps a pretty close account, and we get to see that, correct?
Yeah, and I think that was part of one of the other discussions I had with Chief Cantrell and Chief Young was, listen, if the rec decides long-term they want to do something, they start putting those pieces in place, honestly, most of the stuff they bring to us, it gets put on the consent agenda, and we go on because it's already been looked at by somebody, and it has saved a lot of business on our end, I think, in the process. I'm not saying that, I guess we could take a look at their budgets and stuff, but my intent wasn't to be directly looking down each of them. They are the biggest part of our budget, no doubt.
Sure they are.
But it was more of trying to help them accomplish their long-term goals. I listened when the FOP got up here and said they wanted to talk about recruiting and retention. I don't know that it gets there overnight. It's gonna take a lot of long-term planning and putting the right things in place to get to where they wanna be at long-term, I think. We can't get there doing it at negotiations time every year.
They need a police and fire comprehensive plan, huh?
Well, I think that they do need something, and I think that they probably have an idea about where they want to go, but how you get there isn't, their vehicle to get to do everything they want should be in negotiations every year. That's not great for them, it's not great for us.
Just cramming everything in all at once.
Yeah.
Well, it's
And you
causing
can't-
sacrifices on both people to make something happen one way or the other. If they want to get somewhere, I want to help them get to where they want to get at without it being hostile meeting every time.
But do you think that the people that are gonna actually vote on the final decision should be the people that are on this committee or board?
You guys are, well, not you, but council's the one that determines who's gonna be on those committees or boards. You guys have final approval on who
Right,
goes
we
there.
get people that are brought forward.
And any
we approve the
purchases or
reason for it.
anything like that is sent to council after that board, so you're still gonna have final approval before it's done.
I'll say, I think Jeremy and BK have a tough job already. I don't want to add any more red tape for them, and maybe a committee or board isn't the best way to do it, but there really does need to be some kind of a long-term plan to help them fix the, specifically Jeremy, is hemorrhaging people, it seems like, every year. The fire department, because everybody loves them, they don't ever lose anybody, so they don't have that same problem as Jeremy does. But I think that Jeremy would appreciate a long-term plan, and like I said, it stays with the department and the goals that the department has on going forward, regardless of who the people are.
All right, so there's some good ideas floating around, and ultimately, council will make determination whether they want these committees or not, and if they want to add a person or not, and, with the input from our city attorney, if they do decide to go these routes, we will, have some meaningful parameters set.
Unless you plan to, request this on the council agenda specifically, there's no action to send this to.
Right.
Just making sure that you know that.
Yeah, we know.
The previous one I'm waiting on answer, I think we're all waiting on answer from Chase. As far as this one, as I told Zach, I can't discuss this with other people without putting it on an agenda somewhere, which is fine, but don't be upset to me when it comes on an agenda, because that's the only way I can discuss it. So that's the reason it's on here.
What did you want this for Sarah to be corrected to?
I don't know that I can correct it, but it wasn't oversight committee, it was oversight should have been in there.
Yeah, I don't know where the word oversight came. I don't know.
So this is an amended agenda. The original one said Fire and Police Negotiations Committee, and
Yeah,
it
that's
was
also not
amended
correct.
to oversight, yeah. So I don't know where the language came from before it was put on our agenda
Yeah.
by Jake, so.
Yeah, to my knowledge, I haven't heard anybody that I can recollect saying oversight. They just wanted
Is
to
this what
discuss.
you're talking about?
Is that the email? I'm checking that email from Chase.
Right,
Yeah,
okay.
he just sent it early this week, maybe?
Yeah.
Friday, no, Friday, I'm not doing Friday, he sent Friday. I don't know who, I didn't know who always sent it to.
I have to look it up. I was on vacation, so I didn't.
Looks like
Okay.
it just sent it to you.
Any further discussion on this?
No, I'm good.
Okay. Next item, number 8, unforeseeable business. I know of none. All right, which would be number 9. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second?
All right,
Brown?
Yep.
Gantier?
yes.
Shropshire?
Yes.
All right.
All right.
Do you remember why they didn't want people, why it was 7 days in the RVs? Was about the utilities too, remember?
Well,
People
yeah,